Hey guys, tonight we drift into the hush of California's oak woodlands, where moonlight spills like warm milk over gnarled branches, and the air smells of crushed acorns and distant pine. Picture this: a circle of Pomo women, their fingers moving slower than a lazy river, coaxing golden sedge root into the first coil of a basket that will one day haul 100 pounds of harvest up a mountain. Yeah, you probably won't survive this level of chill. Your eyelids are already staging a quiet rebellion. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment with your location and local time. I'm curious who's dozing off in Tokyo at 3 a.m. or nodding in Nashville under a quilt. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Long before anyone thought to trademark farm to table, the Pomo people were living it. Around 2000 BC, yes, that's mainstream history fact. Number 1, they were already masters of the landscape, reading the oak woodlands like a favorite bedtime story. Every autumn, the valley floors turned into a crunchy carpet of acorns. Nature's version of a grocery aisle restocked for free. But here's the quirky fringe tidbit. Some elders insisted the best sedge grew only where coyotes had marked their territory, claiming the scent kept insects away from the harvest. Modern botanists roll their eyes, but try telling that to a weaver who's carried the same patch of root for 3 generations. The women gathered at dusk, when the heat loosened its grip and the oaks cast long, forgiving shadows. They sat cross-legged on woven mats, babies dozing against their hips, the rhythm of their breathing syncing with the soft scrape of digging sticks. Sedge root thin, tough, and pale as fresh cream lay in damp coils at their feet. Redbud shoots, stripped to reveal a red so deep it looked like embarrassed sunrise, weighted in neat bundles. Historians still argue whether the very first burden baskets were round or oval. Tiny fragments from dry caves show both, and frankly, both sides have a point. Either way, the craft began with a single knot, a promise whispered into fibre. Imagine the scene in slow motion. A grandmother, let's call her the quiet CEO of the circle, selects the thickest sedge root and bends it into a spiral no wider than a teacup saucer. She wraps it with a slender strand, pulling just tight enough to sigh, not squeak. The coil grows, one lazy loop at a time, each turn overlapping the last like shingles on a roof built for eternity. Around her, younger hands mimic the motion, some fumbling, some already dreaming in perfect circles. Laughter floats up, soft as moth wings, when a novice's coil wobbles like a drunk turtle. Patience, the elder murmurs. The basket remembers every rush. By moonlight, the weave takes on a silver glow, the sedge shimmering like strands of starlight pulled to earth. The women work without hurry, trading stories between stitches, tales of the time the river rose and carried off the fish traps, or the winter the snow stayed so long the children forgot the colour green. Each story lands gently, then sinks into the growing basket, another layer of invisible strength. The air smells of damp earth and the faint sweetness of crushed redbud. Somewhere, an owl asks its eternal question, and nobody bothers to answer. As the first coil reaches the width of a dinner plate, the weaver splits a redbud shoot with her thumbnail, crisp, satisfying, like snapping fresh green beans. She lays the red against the pale sedge, and suddenly the basket has a pulse. Red for the blood of the earth, pale for the bones of the sky. Or so the old ones say. Modern eyes might call it simple colour contrast. But try telling that to a woman whose grandmother taught her the pattern, while humming a lullaby older than Rome. The circle grows quieter as true night settles. Crickets provide the backing track, steady as a heartbeat. Fingers slow, but never stop. Stopping would be rude to the materials, like hanging up on an old friend mid-sentence. The starter coil is now the size of a wagon wheel, heavy with possibility. Tomorrow they'll stand it upright, Add walls, shape a mouth wide enough for a child's torso. Tonight is just the foundation. The quiet declaration that abundance will be carried, not left to rot. And here's where the gentle sarcasm slips in. While city folks 4,000 years later panic buy toilet paper at the hint of a storm, these women engineered supply chain resilience with nothing but plants and moonlight. Their burden baskets weren't just containers, they were insurance policies woven from the land itself. A single basket could feed a family for weeks. The acorns inside ground into flour finer than any supermarket aisle. The weave was so tight you could fill it with water and watch the surface tremble but never leak. Try that with your average plastic bucket. The moon climbs higher, washing the oaks in platinum. Shadows stretch, yawn, and relax. A young weaver's head nods. Her neighbor nudges her with an elbow soft as forgiveness. The elder smiles without looking up, her fingers still dancing. Somewhere in the darkness, a buck snorts, then thinks better of interrupting. The circle holds. The coil thickens. The night deepens. And the very first burden basket begins its slow, deliberate breathing, already practicing for the weight of entire harvests yet to fall. The coil has grown bold now, rising from the flat spiral into gentle walls that curve like the inside of a hug you didn't know you needed. Dawn is still hours away, but the women have coaxed the basket upright on a bed of soft pine needles, and the real magic, watertight, stubborn, harvest-defying magic begins to take shape. Redbud shoots, split and soaked until they're supple as sleeping cats, slide through sedge with a sound like distant rain on leaves. Each wrap pulls tighter than the last, until the weave locks together with the smug satisfaction of a bank vault built from grass. Mainstream fact time. By the time Europeans were still figuring out how to keep their thatched roofs from leaking, Pomo burden baskets were already carrying loads equivalent to a modern backpacker's worst nightmare. Up to 100 pounds of acorns balanced on a tump line across the forehead. That's not hyperbole. Excavated examples from dry caves show wear patterns on the rims that match the exact angle of a human skull leaning forward under serious weight. Your average gym bro couldn't deadlift that without posting a selfie first. The women work in pairs now, one feeding the weft while the other coils the foundation. Their movements so synchronized they look like a single organism, with 4 hands and 2 lullabies. The basket rises in slow, deliberate tiers, each coil overlapping the one below by half its width, creating a seam stronger than any glue. They test the tension with a fingernail too loose, and the acorns will dance out like mischievous kids. Too tight, and the fibers will sulk and snap later. Balance, always balance. The same lesson the mountains teach the trails. Here's the quirky fringe tidbit. Some weavers tucked a single owl feather into the 3rd coil from the bottom, claiming it kept mice from nibbling the stored grain. Skeptical archaeologists found feather barbs in century-old baskets and shrugged coincidence or ancient pest control. Either way, the mice apparently got the memo. The feather stays, tucked so neatly it's invisible unless you know to tilt the basket toward moonlight and squint. The walls climb higher, the mouth widening into a generous oval that will someday swallow armfuls of acorns without complaint. Redbud flashes in diagonal bands, creating patterns that look random until you step back and realize you're staring at a map of the seasonal creeks. Historians still argue whether these designs were purely decorative or functional trail guides. Some coils match known Sierra passes so precisely that modern hikers have used replica baskets as crude topographical references. Try that with your GPS when the battery dies. The air cools, dew beads on the sedge like tiny glass pearls. A baby stirs, nurses, drifts off again. The rhythm of suckling blending with the soft thud of redbud against palm. The elder pauses to stretch, vertebrae popping like distant campfire embers, then resumes without missing a beat. Her basket is nearly knee-high now, the interior smooth as a river stone, the exterior a textured riot of colour and grip. She runs a thumb along the rim, perfect, No proud strands to snag a forehead later. Winter looms in the conversation now. A guest who hasn't arrived but has already sent ahead its calling card, empty bellies and frostbitten toes. The women speak of it without fear, the way sailors mention storms, respectful, prepared, armed with coils. Last year, the deer vanished early, spooked by a cougar with a limp. The baskets carried the village through until the salmon runs returned. This year, the oaks dropped heavy, a promise in every fallen cap. The weave tightens, as if the basket itself is nodding in agreement. A young weaver barely past her first bleeding tests the walls by pressing her full weight against them. The basket flexes, sighs, holds. She laughs, a sound like wind chimes made of shells, and the circle ripples with it. The elder allows herself half a smile. Pride is a private thing, shown in the set of shoulders rather than words. The girl's basket is smaller, practice for the day she'll carry her own child's weight plus dinner. But the weave is flawless. Muscle memory is being born tonight, passed hand to hand like a secret handshake. Moonlight fades to pearl. The first bird offers a tentative chirp, then thinks better of it. The women add one final tear, then flip the basket upside down to shape the base rounded, stable, forgiving, on uneven trails. They pack damp sand inside to hold the form while the fibers dry into their new destiny. The sand smells of river and sun, a memory of summer pressed into service. When they lift it out tomorrow, the basket will stand alone, proud as a toddler taking its first step. And here's joke number one, because even history needs a giggle break. Imagine explaining to a Pomo weaver that in a few thousand years people will pay $50 for a wicker basket at a big box store, mass-produced, leaks like a politician's promise, and collapses under a bag of oranges. She'd probably offer you a sympathetic pat and suggest you stick to carrying your emotional baggage instead. The circle begins to break apart. Women stretching, yawning, gathering scraps into neat bundles. The finished baskets, 3 of them tonight, lean against an oak trunk like sleepy sentinels, their mouths gape wide, ready for the harvest that will come when the acorns thud to the ground in fat, satisfying plops. The weave is so dense you could fill one with water and float a candle. In fact, some weavers do exactly that during naming ceremonies, the flame dancing on the surface like a tiny, well-behaved star. The elder runs her hand along the largest basket one last time, feeling for imperfections that aren't there. She nods, satisfied. Tomorrow the men will leach the bitter tannin from the acorns in cold streams. But tonight, the women have done their part, turning grass and twig into a vessel that defies gravity, weather, and hunger. The basket breathes with them, fibers settling into their final embrace, already practicing for the weight of winters yet to come. The baskets stand empty at dawn, mouths open like they're yawning after a long night of becoming. Mist curls through the oaks, soft as the breath of sleeping giants, and the women are already moving bare feet silent on dew-slick grass toward the harvest grounds. The largest burden basket, the elder's masterpiece, gets its first real test today. A tumpline of woven willow bark looped across a forehead, the weight settling between shoulder blades like an old friend who never learned personal space. 100 pounds of acorns will ride in that coil before sunset, and the basket doesn't even blink. Mainstream fact, incoming. Pomo burden baskets were so efficient that a single weaver could transport more calories in one trip than a hunter could drag home in meat over 3 days. Acorns high in fat, stable in storage were the original energy bars, and the baskets were the reusable wrapper. Your trail mix wishes it had this kind of resume. The trail to the Sierra foothills begins gentle, the deer path widened by generations of moccasins. The weaver leans forward, the tumpline pulling her gaze to the earth, each step a negotiation with gravity. The basket rides high, its rounded base cradling the load so evenly that the acorns shift only when she wants them to. Redbud patterns flash in the morning light, diagonal bands that look like lightning, frozen mid-strike, or rivers seen from a hawk's height. To the trained eye, those patterns are clan histories, stitched in plant dye. Here the story of the flood that reshaped the valley. There the marriage that joined 2 villages. Over there, the year the grasshoppers ate the tulle and everyone learned to love cattail pudding. Historians still argue whether the patterns were primarily mnemonic devices or artistic flexes. Some coils match oral genealogies so precisely that elders could read a basket like a family tree, while others seem purely decorative, like jazz riffs on a theme. Both sides have baskets in museums to wave like flags. And honestly, the debate is as endless as the trails themselves. The quirky fringe tidbit slinks in here. A few weavers swore that if you hummed the right note while tightening a coil, the basket would remember the pitch and stay in tune with the carrier's heartbeat for life. Modern acousticians tried it with replicas and got interesting resonance data. The baskets did vibrate at frequencies that matched relaxed human pulses. Coincidence? Ancient biofeedback? Or just really good PR for humming grandmothers? Take your pick. The trail steepens, switching back through manzanita thickets that snag at skirts like clingy toddlers. The weaver adjusts her stance, knees soft, weight forward, the basket swaying but never tipping. Acorns clack softly inside, a muted rainstick symphony, sweat beads at her temples, but the tumpline spreads the load so evenly that her neck muscles barely complain. Behind her, a line of women stretches like a braid, mothers, aunts, girls on the cusp of womanhood, each carrying her own burden. The smallest basket no larger than a melon, but already proud with perfect coils. At a granite outcrop, they pause. The view spills open, valleys quilted in oak and pine, the distant glint of a river that will leach tannin from the harvest later. The elder sets her basket down gently, like lowering a sleeping child, and runs a palm along the rim. Nowhere yet, but the redbud has darkened where her forehead pressed, a temporary tattoo of effort. She smiles, the kind that doesn't need teeth. The basket has passed its first exam. A girl, remember the one whose practice basket held her weight last night, drops her load with a thud that sends acorns rolling like mischievous marbles. Laughter ripples. Someone tosses a stray nut and it bounces off the girl's shoulder. She sticks out her tongue, then scrambles to gather the escapees. The elder watches, says nothing, but her eyes crinkle. The girl's weave is holding. That's praise enough. Joke number 2. Because even mountains appreciate a chuckle. Imagine these women discovering modern backpacking gear, aluminum frames, ergonomic straps, hydration bladders. They'd probably pat the inventor on the head, hand him a tumpline, and watch him cry after 10 minutes. Some designs don't need improvement, they just need respect. The trail narrows, forcing single file. Pine needles cushion each footfall, releasing their sharp, nostalgic scent. The baskets sway in unison, a slow pendulum of red and gold against green. Overhead, a raven croaks approval or mockery, hard to tell with ravens. The women answer with a low hum, the same note from the quirky tidbit. And for a moment the forest feels like it's breathing with them. The baskets seem to lighten, or maybe the carriers just forget the weight for a few steps. Midday heat pools in the canyons, but the weave breathes. Tiny gaps between coils too small for acorns, perfect for air, keep the load from sweating. The weaver's back stays dry where the basket touches. A small mercy on a long climb. She thinks of winters past, the year the snow came early and the baskets were the only thing between the village and hunger. She thinks of the baby she'll nurse tonight, fat on acorn mush. The coil against her spine feels like a promise kept. At the crest, the trail levels into a meadow ringed by oaks older than memory. The women spill out, baskets thumping to the grass in a chorus of relief. Acorns carpet the ground, some still wearing their caps like jaunty hats. The harvest begins in earnest hands plunging, skirts filling, the soft clatter of nut against nut. The elder's basket swallows load after load, its mouth never quite full, like a polite guest who keeps room for dessert. A young weaver tests her pattern against the landscape, holding her basket aloft. The redbud diagonals line up perfectly with a distant ridge. She gasps, delighted. The elder nods once. The girl has just read her first trail map woven in fiber. The moment is quiet, but it hums louder than any song. The sun tilts west, painting the meadow in honey. The baskets are nearly brimming now, their sides bowed but unbowed, coils flexing like lungs. The women will leach the acorns tonight, grind them tomorrow, bake them the day after. The cycle turns, slow and sure as the earth itself. The burdened basket's simple grass, clever hands carry the weight of entire seasons without complaint. The meadow exhales. Shadows stretch long and lazy across the grass, and the women settle into the final rhythm of the day, filling, adjusting, tying off the last coils of the harvest. The elder's basket, now a proud mound of acorns, sits like a small hill of plenty, its redbud patterns glowing warmer in the slanted light. 100 pounds rest inside, give or take a handful that rolled away and decided to become next year's oak instead. The weave doesn't groan. It simply is. The way mountains simply are. Mainstream fact. Soft as a lullaby. Pomo villages stored enough acorn flour in pit caches to last 2 full years if the oaks ever sulked. That's not survival. That's quiet confidence in tomorrow. Your pantry could learn a thing or two. The women form a loose circle again, but this time it's for closing, not starting. They pass a gourd of cool water, each sip a small communion. The youngest weaver, still flushed from her trail map discovery, leans against her basket, fingers tracing the pattern that matched the ridge. She hums that heartbeat note, and the basket answers with a faint, friendly creak. The elder watches, eyes half-lidded, the way you watch a fire settle into embers. The girl's future is already woven into the coil. All that's left is the walking, is the quirky fringe tidbit, whispered, like a secret between friends. Claiming the nut would teach the fibers how to cradle its siblings. Archaeologists digging old village sites keep finding these lone sprouted acorns fused into the weave tiny trees that never quite gave up. Historians still argue whether it was ritual, fertilizer, or just a grandmother's way of saying, grow damn it. The baskets, polite as ever, keep the secret. The sun touches the ridge, bleeding gold into the sky. The women sling their tumplines once more, leaning into the descent. The baskets ride lower now. Gravity a willing partner on the way down. Acorns shift and settle, finding their final arrangement like passengers dozing on a long bus ride. The trail winds through oak tunnels, the air cooler, scented with crushed leaves and the faint mineral tang of the river waiting below. Each footfall is softer than the last, the day's work folding itself into memory. Joke number 3, because even abundance deserves a giggle. Imagine these baskets at a modern potluck. Everyone else brings a sad casserole in Tupperware. The Pomo roll up with 100 pounds of organic, gluten-free, locally sourced energy bombs. Conversation stops. Someone asks for the recipe. The elder just smiles and says, "Time, mostly." The village appears in the valley, smoke curling from cook fires like friendly fingers waving hello. Children spot the caravan and sprint uphill, bare feet drumming excitement. They swarm the baskets, not to unload yet, but to press small hands against the weave. Feeling the warmth of the day still trapped in the fibers, one toddler tries to climb inside. His mother scoops him out with a laugh that sounds like wind chimes again. The basket doesn't mind. It's used to being loved. At the leaching pools, shallow basins lined with sand and patience, the real transformation begins. Acorns spilling golden waterfalls. The sound like dry rain. Women wade knee-deep, stirring with paddles carved from oak galls, the bitter tannin leaching out in slow, patient swirls. The baskets rest on the bank, mouths still open, watching their cargo become something new. Flour tomorrow, bread the day after. Life, the day after that. Night settles gentle as a quilt. The elder sits by the fire, her basket finally empty and resting against her knee like a faithful dog. She runs a thumb along the rim, worn now, softened by the day's honest work. The redbud has faded slightly where sweat and sun kissed it, but the pattern is sharper for the wear, like a story told so often it shines. She thinks of the girl who read the ridge, of the baby who will eat this harvest, of the winter that will come and go, because the coil's held. The fire pops, sending a spark skyward. Somewhere, an owl asks its question again. This time, the elder answers with a soft hum. The basket seems to lean into the sound, fibers relaxing after their long day of holding the world. The village quiets, dogs curling, children yawning, the river murmuring its endless lullaby. The oaks stand guard, acorns spent but roots deep, already dreaming of next year's fall. And now, dear listener, let the pacing slow, the words soften, the sentences stretch like a cat in sunlight. The baskets are empty, the harvest safe, the night kind. Feel the weight lift from your own shoulders, the way the tumpline finally slips free. The coils have done their work. Now it's your turn to rest. Picture the elder's basket by the fire, its patterns glowing faint in the embers, holding nothing but moonlight and memory. Let that image settle behind your eyes. Gentle as dew, the oaks whisper, the river sings, the weave cradles the quiet persistence of life. You're safe here, carried by hands long gone but still strong. Breathe in the scent of pine and warm earth. Breathe out the day. The story is finished, the harvest complete, the night endless and kind. Drift now, soft as sedge, deep as redbud, held in the coil of a basket that will never let you fall. Sweet dreams.